Hello there, good evening. Welcome to Look North. Our top story tonight. We look at the impact of long COVID on our frontline NHS staff as doctors plan legal action against the NHS.
Many of these healthcare workers contracted COVID whilst providing vital medical care to poorly patients in absence of the correct protective equipment. We were left knowingly vulnerable to infection.
We'll get the NHS response and speak to one expert who says long COVID is still affecting millions of people. Also tonight, as the official ban on XL bully dogs comes into force this week, we hear from Yorkshire owners as they adjust to new rules. A Rotherham councillor apologises after falling asleep in a council meeting about child sexual exploitation. And we join the January Dippers on their final plunge as they celebrate raising £150,000 for charity.
And did you see that spectacular sunrise this morning? That was taken up in North Yorkshire. I'll have more of your pictures and, of course, that detailed forecast in the next 20 minutes.
Hello, thanks for your company tonight. It's 4 years to the day since COVID was first detected in Yorkshire, and the fallout from the pandemic still continues. A doctor and a nurse who contracted the disease after working on the front line say that ongoing symptoms of long COVID have destroyed their lives. It comes as a group of doctors plan legal action against the NHS and government for failing to provide adequate protective equipment. The NHS says it acted in line with guidance. Coronavirus in Yorkshire.
4 years ago today,
Britain's first 2 known cases fell ill while staying at a hotel in York.
the start of the pandemic spreading across the UK. In the weeks that followed, our hospitals changed beyond all recognition. Some medical staff say they're still suffering with long COVID today. They've been left too unwell to work and are now in financial ruin. This is Kelly. She just started her career as a junior doctor in the spring of 2020. She caught COVID while working at the Bradford Royal Infirmary. She was 34 and hasn't been able to work ever since.
I'm certainly not a pre-COVID Kelly, so I'm still physically and cognitively limited. I have a high resting heart rate, which increases disproportionately on standing. I still suffer with bilateral tinnitus and insomnia.
Claire still suffers with long COVID too. She worked on the front line as a palliative care nurse in Huddersfield.
COVID has ripped my family apart. I've nearly died twice. My children have had to say goodbye to me twice. I'm not out of the woods yet, by any means.
Claire had worked for the NHS for 26 years.
I loved my job. This wasn't a choice. I chose to help and care for people.
Both healthcare workers feel they weren't given adequate protective clothing to wear. Now, Kelly has started the Long COVID Doctors for Action group. It's pledging legal action against the NHS for negligent workplace exposure to coronavirus.
There now needs to be justice and legal accountability for healthcare workers injured. Many of these healthcare workers contracted COVID whilst providing vital medical care.
I know that I've helped thousands of patients and families in the years that I worked, and that's what I hold on to. That's what I hold on to. But am I angry at the government? Yeah. Am I angry at NHS? Yeah, I am. They let me down.
Both Claire and Kelly want to see support and compensation for all healthcare professionals whose careers were destroyed by long COVID. Hannah Gray, BBC Look North.
Well, the NHS England says it acted in line with infection prevention control guidance. The Department for Health told us it had acted to save lives and livelihoods through the pandemic and is committed to learning lessons from the ongoing COVID inquiry. Bradford Royal Infirmary didn't want to comment further. Let's talk a little bit more about long COVID now and its impact. I've been speaking to Leeds GP Dr Ben Sinclair, who runs an online long COVID clinic.
ONS statistics from last year suggest that 2.3 million people were suffering from long COVID. So 1 in 10 people who get acute COVID go on to develop some long COVID, and then 1 in 30 have severe long COVID like I did. So it's very common.
And the symptoms can be wide-ranging, can't they? So how do you know if you have long COVID?
Well, it's characterised by a crushing fatigue and also exhaustion after doing something that's quite stressful or exertional. Or using your brain may actually cause physical symptoms. So if you're having those sorts of symptoms, you may well have long COVID, and it's really important to get checked out.
Your symptoms presented themselves differently to that, though, didn't they?
It did. So I was working as a doctor in prison. I got an acute COVID, and 4 months later, I had a significant neurological problem where my left side became very weak. I couldn't talk properly. And I spent 3 months in bed trying to recuperate and learn about how to get better, and ended up launching an online long COVID service as a result to try and help other people.
And in terms of help, what can you do to lessen your symptoms, if you like?
So resting is really important, and dietary change, cleaning up the diet, but also there are some medicines that can help. Antihistamines over the counter can help, and under the guidance of a doctor such as ourselves, you might consider things like aspirin or more complicated medicines if it's more severe.
As someone who is a general practitioner but also living with long COVID, what are the certain things that make your symptoms worse?
Well, for myself, I found that exercise, although I loved it, actually made me far worse. And so I had to stop all exercise and completely rest. And in our clinic, we advise people to rest thoroughly to start their recovery. We also find stress tends to make people worse, and certain dietary foods that people will eat actually can make this worse, such as sugar and alcohol. All these things tend to inflame the body and set off a chain reaction, which can make long COVID an awful lot worse.
It's Dr. Sinclair, thank you for your time. Next night, bookings at a dog park in Leeds have rocketed in the run-up to the ban on XL bully dogs, which comes into force tomorrow. Owners who've registered their pets can keep them, but in public places they have to be muzzled and on a lead, while some owners say they feel awkward taking their dog out on the streets. You may find some of the images in Heidi Tomlinson's report upsetting.
Right, are we going to put this on, mister?
Bruno, the XL bully, has been trained to wear a muzzle. By law, he has to be on a lead and muzzled in public places. From tomorrow, this breed of dog is banned in the UK. Owner Janine Oxley from Sheffield applied for a certificate of exemption so she can keep him, but she doesn't agree with the ban.
I would suggest vetting the owners, to be honest. I do know that these dogs, because they're such a big breed, they can be dangerous, and when they're not with the right owners, that's not a good thing.
She describes Bruno as a docile creature, but he is classed as a dangerous dog because the government says XL bullies have been disproportionately involved in the rising number of fatal dog attacks. Last year, CCTV captured the moment a man walking his dog in Sheffield was set upon by another dog. And in September, Katie Deer from Doncaster was mauled by an XL bully, her arm and hand seriously injured.
My little finger was partially amputated, which I was totally unaware of until the passers-by were giving me first aid.
Come on then, come on.
Jo Smith owns Woofing Woods, a safe area to exercise dogs. She took in XL bully puppy Arthur, knowing she could give him a good life. At this enclosed training ground near Leeds, the area is designed so that dogs can run around securely. Registered XL bullies can be exercised off the lead and without their muzzle, but just one owner at a time.
Bookings, well, you can't get in until March. Basically because XL bullies can come here. Be off lead, muzzle free. I've really pushed it as well with my insurance and made sure that I've been clear, and everything that I've posted on social media to give people updates has been facts and from insurance.
There are strict rules in force to phase out this breed, but according to the RSPCA, a blanket ban is not the answer.
Breed-specific legislation is a knee-jerk response to dog incidents. What we have to see is much more effective measures being put in place that genuinely protect public safety and that ensure that we've got happy, healthy dogs living in our communities.
Janine says Bruno is a happy, safe dog, but she experiences adverse reactions daily.
You do get a lot of stares when you go for a walk, especially now he's muzzled. People are really scared of him, whereas he's such a soft dog that there's actually no need to be.
Heidi Tomlinson, BBC Look North.
You're watching Wednesday's Look North, still to come on tonight's programme. A wrongful conviction overturned and still no compensation. The impact on one postmaster's family. A woman was repeatedly stabbed in the back by her abusive partner as she made a 999 call from her Doncaster home, a court heard today. Kelly Bothwell was killed at her home in Sprotborough in August last year. Paul Cousins has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 19 years after pleading guilty to murder. Sheffield Crown Court heard today of a history of domestic abuse and that had previously been reported to police. Well, it's been another day of disruption on Yorkshire's railways. Northern and TransPennine Express have not been running any services because of a strike by drivers in the ASLEF union. The government has given rail companies the power to ask staff to work to keep some services running, but both firms have decided not to use it. Mark Ansell is at Leeds Railway Station for us tonight. Well, it looks pretty quiet there, Mark. You may as well just go home.
Certainly is, Amy. It's eerily quiet here. This is usually one of the busiest railway stations in the country, but not so today. And that is because there have been no services by Northern or TransPennine Express because of the strike action taken by the train drivers. It's a long-running dispute over pay, and the union says that different operators around the country will be taking strike action on different days right up until Monday. We've been asking people outside Leeds Railway Station what they make of the strike action.
Kind of feel a bit indifferent about it because I understand why they're doing it. You know, like the climate, with everything going on in the world, people struggling, they want the due being paid correctly and everything.
It costs me a fortune in Ubers every day, but it is what it is, isn't it? So they want more money, we want the trains to be on time, but hopefully they'll find a solution.
At the end of the day, they work extremely hard and deserve the pay that they get or deserve the conditions that they get. If they don't feel they've been correctly treated, then they have every right to do so.
TransPennine Express have said that there'll be a very limited timetable in place tomorrow. They have apologised for the impact on passengers, and they've also described the ban on overtime brought in by the union as part of the strike action. They say it will cause disruption, delays and some short notice cancellations. Meanwhile, Northern have also apologised and they say that they're hoping for a resolution to the issue as soon as possible. Now, in terms of which train company is going to be affected over the next few days, let me tell you that on Friday, LNER will be impacted, and that's the main service from Yorkshire down to London. So expect disruption on those trains. And then on Saturday, East Midlands Railway will be impacted by this strike action by the ASLEF union. And that, of course, is another of the services from Sheffield down to London. So expect more rail disruption over the next few days up until Monday, Amy.
Mark, thanks for the update. Relatives and friends of a Chesterfield man wrongly jailed for taking money from his post office says his whole family has suffered. Harjinder Putoy, we've spoken to him a few times in the past, is one of many people affected by the Horizon scandal who are still waiting for compensation. Simon Hare reports.
Harjinder Putoy walks free from the Court of Appeal in 2021 after his conviction was quashed, along with those of 38 other postmasters. His family were at his side that day. But almost 3 years on, they say they are all still suffering.
That day I can't tell you what is happened on my family. Very hard. I never listen like, we never do anything like this in my family, in my life. 50 years, I'm in UK, we never done anything wrong.
We're a very close family, in a sense. And for something like this, the impact obviously was very, very hard originally. I mean, even when he was arrested, on the day he was arrested, I asked the police officer and the girl from the post office, I says, are you 100% sure you got this fact right? She says, yes, we've got every information we need. Not everybody believed what we were saying, because obviously once that sticks, it doesn't wash off whatever you do. You know, even now that it's cleared, the stain is still there because it's still deep in there.
When Harjinder was jailed for 3 years in 2007, his wife Balbinder and children had to pack up and leave their business at Sutton in Ashfield overnight and move in with his parents in Chesterfield. Family friend Kathy Sims has seen firsthand the impact it's had on all of them.
He lived for years with a criminal conviction. He had to bankrupt himself to be able to pay some of the money back that the post office said he owed. And the fact that the compensation is still not sorted out nearly 3 years later is really disappointing.
But the family also want those responsible to now be punished. Simon Hare, BBC Look North, Derbyshire.
A councillor in Rotherham has apologised after falling asleep during a briefing on child sexual exploitation. Several Rotherham councillors said Labour's Alan Atkin was heard snoring in yesterday's meeting. He's had the whip suspended by the Labour Party. Our political editor James Vincent can tell us more.
Council meetings are often quite long. They're also sometimes pretty dry, but they're always important.
We will then take those proposals to Cabinet in September.
This one was in Rotherham yesterday. It was about child sexual exploitation, and a councillor said sorry after he fell asleep.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Bacon?
Thank you for the report. Just in terms of
Councillor Alan Atkin, seen at the front here, says he's embarrassed about it and has apologised. He told us he's going to see his doctor. It's something he says I've been putting off for ages. I'm embarrassed about it. I put it down to my age and weight. I have just ignored it. Labour has suspended the whip from Councillor Atkin, saying his conduct in the meeting was far from the standard of professionalism and diligence we expect from our elected officials. Opponents were quick to criticise.
I think it's highly disrespectful. And secondly, I do not think that he's fit to be a councillor. I don't think a medical condition excuses anything not listening intently to the meeting. Fundamentally, when you're told about potentially the abuse of girls, you sit up, you listen, you pay attention.
Councillor Atkin told us that if it hadn't been for the subject matter we are talking about, it wouldn't be a story. People fall asleep at work all the time, don't they? It happened. I wish it wouldn't have happened. I was probably asleep for 2 minutes. It's unknown how long Councillor Atkin will be suspended from Labour for. James Vincent, BBC Look North.
Let's have some sport now, and a big night in the ice hockey. Sheffield Steelers are hoping to reach the Challenge Cup final with thousands of fans expected for tonight's semi-final second leg. Paul Ogden is at the arena for us this evening.
Well, this is the point at which, Amy, we usually say on Look North, all to play for. That is true, but ahead of tonight's second leg of the semi-final, the Steelers are already 6-0 up against Coventry, their opponents from the second leg. I trust you can hear me still above the Zamboni, the famous ice flattener here at the Sheffield Arena and all ice hockey arenas. Here's another thing that can flatten the ice. Steelers defender Kevin Tansey. A treat to have you with us, generally in Yorkshire, and here tonight with us on Look North, Kevin. What's the risk of complacency here tonight? You're 6-0 up.
Yeah, it's a game that we have to take like any other game. We want to win the individual 60 minutes. We know we can't take it too easy because, you know, it's for a chance at a trophy, so we want to take it as hard as we can to them and play like a normal game.
Wouldn't it be great, having got you here to the Steelers, you personally, to get some silverware at the end of the season? You're top of the ladder and also on the brink of the Challenge Cup final.
It's what every player in every sport aspires to. When I came here this year, I knew that there'd be a good chance of winning some trophies here. So getting this much closer, getting this 6-0 lead in the first leg, it's what we worked for. It's what we've worked for all year, and we're happy to be here.
You've had to deal with an emotional challenge, of course, with the terrible events of the tragedy suffered against Nottingham Panthers. The ice hockey family pulled together. The crowd, the generation of any kind of emotion here still surprises a lot of people at the Sheffield Steelers alone.
Yeah, whenever something like that happens, I mean, it doesn't really happen, so it was a pretty big shock, but I think it brought us closer as a team. I think it reminded of us how grateful we are to be able to do this.
Keep going on the ice, certainly, Kevin, because honours are still to come for Sheffield Steelers, and the best of luck tonight.
Thank you.
Great to have Kevin Tansey on the show with us tonight. 6-0 up the Steelers, remember. Face-off is at 7:30 here at the Sheffield Arena. And now that the ice-flattening Zamboni has actually left us alone for a while, I can also tell you about the really good performance and result in League Two last night for Harrogate Town. How good is their season proving to be now? A third victory on the bounce by 2-1 away at Sutton United last night. And that came courtesy of 2 second-half goals from Jack Muldoon. Very well crafted, very well taken they were as well. And before you leave me, let me just also say congratulations to Bradford City, commiserations to Doncaster Rovers. It was Bradford City who won the EFL Trophy quarter-final last night. The Bantams qualified through to the semi-final. For Sheffield United, extended highlights, by the way, tonight. Match of the day, 10:40, BBC One, right after your late Look North bulletin. Back to you.
Well, from the ice to holding the ice. How are your New Year's resolutions going so far? Dry January finishes at midnight tonight if you've given up the booze. And it's also the end of a rather chilly fundraising challenge. Take a look at these pictures. The January Dippers started 6 years ago as a group of friends going for a swim in the outdoors every day of the month. You can imagine how cold that is. They've now raised £150,000 for homeless charity Crisis. Olivia Richwell joins them for their final plunge near Todmorden.
This is dedication to dipping. A 40-minute round trip up a steep hill above Todmorden in slippery conditions and a very strong wind. Day 31 of cold water immersion to raise money for the charity Crisis.
All the way up, I'm always in my head saying, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, why am I doing it, why am I here? But when you're in, you just get this immediate sense of like release, and then getting out is just brilliant. I love it.
The dipping began on New Year's Day, and they haven't missed a tick off the calendar since. The idea started in 2018.
I'm absolutely freezing without even getting wet. I mean, how do you do this?
Willpower. And it's knowing why we're doing it, you know, because we get a chance to, you know, back into a car, go home, roof over our head, nice cosy house. The guys we're doing it for, they don't have that choice. So, you know, we think of them all the time, why we're doing it, get on and do it.
Some days, if it's really cold, as you know, January's been a really bleak month, you know, you might need a little bit of spurring on. I've not been too bad, thankfully. I think I had one day where I felt really down in the dumps, but I pulled myself out. But yeah, we have the opportunity to make that decision, don't we? You know, going out into the cold, whereas obviously homeless people don't.
Today they're marking the end of the challenge at Gaddings Dam Beach. Its name belies today's Arctic conditions.
I wasn't planning on going in when I came up here, but it's really hard to say no to a challenge. Wish me luck.
Cold water swimming can be dangerous, even fatal, and that's why swimming in a group and going with experienced cold water swimmers is recommended. As a complete novice, they also recommended I only stayed in for a few minutes.
It feels quite prickly and quite icy getting in, the first sensation, but then once you're in, there's a moment of, I'd call it sort of absolute clarity, really, that everything else stops, everything slows, everything becomes still, and you breathe out and take it all in, and a great feeling of achievement that you've done something difficult.
Over the past 6 years, the group, which has members across the north, has raised tens of thousands of pounds for Crisis. From waterfalls to wheelie bins and even wells, the only requirement is getting cold and wet. And as the last of the daily dippers dries off, the group is hoping that its Just Giving page hits £10,000 for 2024. Olivia Richwald, BBC Look North, near Todmorden.
Yes, Olivia, you did it. Well done. I have absolute respect for the January Dippers, having tried it last year.
No, I'm sure I'd have a heart attack. It's so cold.
Yeah,
but
very cold.
yeah, you must feel fantastic afterwards.
That sunrise this morning, I don't normally open the curtains because it's just bleak and I can't dread it, but this morning it was gorgeous.
Absolutely fantastic. I think there was a little bit of Saharan dust in there, which scatters all the light apart from the reds and the oranges, but we were inundated with this. Not just that, Take a look at this. Now, this altocumulus lenticularis is the main reason for UFO sightings around the world. It was absolutely perfect there in Wetherby. So thanks very much for sending those pictures in. If you've got any more, or you want to see my little explainer about lenticular clouds, well, that's on Instagram and on X, and you can send many more of those pictures into the Weather Watcher websites. There's some stunning ones on there at the moment. Now, of course, thank goodness we've seen the back of January statistically wise. It was a normal month, which is quite something these days. February's getting off to a bright start. It looks dry with some sunshine. The best of the sunshine always first thing, as it tends to cloud over from the west during the course of the day. Now, the main feature of the weather Friday and the weekend will be temperature levels. It's a very, very mild direction coming all the way up from the subtropics, but this little weather front will cause us problems. Very weak. Nevertheless, the front could pep up a little bit, bringing a little patchy rain and drizzle, especially over the hills, but it's not looking too bad. A lot of cloud, but very mild as we head into the weekend. Now, we've got a weather front bringing rain down really quickly, actually. The back edge is just coming through parts of North Yorkshire right now, so wet for a short period of time this evening, but that rain really clears quickly away to the southeast, and then we'll have to watch out for some icy patches on untreated surfaces with temperatures close to freezing point, especially in countryside areas. So tomorrow's high water times in Scarborough 8:01, Bridlington at 8:27. So it's a lovely start. Again, frost and ice a possibility. Then it's dry and bright, plenty of sunshine. You can see the clouds just moving in from the west during the day. So the afternoon, variable clouds, still some bright or sunny intervals, and most places should be dry. Temperatures close to normal for the first day of February, generally around 8 degrees. Friday and the weekend looks pretty cloudy, a little drizzle in places. Temperatures, just check that out for early February, way above average. That's the forecast.
Balmy. Is it worth opening the curtains in the morning?
If you want to open the curtains, yeah.
I said, will it look like that?
No, it won't look like that.
I'll keep them shut then. That's it from us. Keely will be here with your late news. Bye-bye for now.